1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
3, 4, better lock your door.
5, 6, grab your crucifix.
7, 8, gonna stay up late.
9, 10, never sleep again. That is coming at you on this week's episode of the Deadlights Pod.
The devil's eyes.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
You're gonna need a bigger potion.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I'll play a game.
Want it? Kill 'em all. Want it?
You look so you can mine. Live, dead, lives.
Welcome to the Deadlights Podcast. I'm your host, Sam.
And I'm your host, Matt, bringing you yet another week of a deep dive into a tremendous horror.
Tremendous horror on a tremendous podcast, if I might say. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications.
And hammer in those comments for us. We're excited to hear from you guys this week.
You want to hear, especially this week. I mean, we brought out a classic for this one. I thought, why not?
And perfectly kind of segues what we previously just reviewed too.
I know, it's weird how these episodes are kind of flowing into each other perfectly.
Seamlessly, one might say.
It's like the Deadlights are planning this or something. But this week we got one of my faves. That would be Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, written and directed by Wes Craven. Teenager Nancy Thompson must uncover the dark truth concealed by her parents after she and her friends become the targets of a spirit of a serial killer with a bladed glove in their dreams, in which if they die, it kills them in real life. Coming at our dreams now.
You know, and we going back. So what were this 84, right?
84.
As you just said. Mm-hmm. So 9 years after we get scared to go into the water. Thank you to Steven Spielberg. We're now terrified to fucking go to sleep. So there, you can't hide. There's no getting away from it. There's no peaceful sleeping to wash away the bad, scary imagery. It's coming for you right where you're tucked in tightest.
And that is exactly what Wes Craven was thinking about when he conceived of this movie.
I've always felt like nightmares are the horror movies of the psyche. Conversely, horror films are kind of the nightmares of a culture. They talk about the things that our normal, rational mind or our polite society doesn't really want to bring to the dinner table.
You know, we're talking about a huge horror icon here that, again, unbeknownst to them, they were creating. They had no idea that it was happening.
From the extent of what they created and the fact that, you know, New Line Cinema became the house that Freddy built. That without everything that it took to get this project off the ground, it wouldn't have been really, wouldn't have come into surmise. The production company wouldn't have come to be.
In the early 80s, I think Wes had his first draft of the script, and the agent had shopped it around. Most people just said, I don't know if it'll work. I just don't you have anything else? The only person that believed in it was Bob Shea. Bob was running New Line Pictures, which I think at the time was a 16mm distribution company.
This film itself brought in around like $54 million on a shoestring budget that had to be like Bob Shea, first timer coming in, starting this New Line. He had nothing to back me, had no money to give to anybody like starting out. They just had to be like, trust that the money that we were going to owe to you, that we're going to promise is going to come.
With great pain and suffering, I will tell you that. As much the pain and suffering you go through making a film is nowhere near the pain and suffering you go through financing it.
I mean, thinking about like Jaws and trusting the process, not collapsing on that. There was a similar through line of, you know, some hairiness on this production to get it through all the way to the end. But they stuck through it.
I'm glad that you brought up Jaws, but also Terrifier too. Honestly, looking at the first 3 films that we've talked about in this podcast so far, it's all about the belief in the product, no matter what. In the face of insurmountable odds, how can we possibly get this film done on this budget, on the water? But they do it because there is a belief there. There's a passion for filmmaking. And so we didn't plan that, but I'm really happy that we're showcasing these films that really, really are about people coming together to make something that they really believe in, and then it does become something that is so much bigger than they imagined it would be.
Nobody got it except Bob.
I said I thought that sounded fantastic because it had an element that I'm always looking for, which is something that all audiences can relate to. And everybody, of course, could relate to scary dreams and nightmares.
The bad news is Bob didn't have any money. He spent months and months, if not years, trying to get the money together to shoot this movie.
And when you're getting these organic ideas that are like really tied in together, like with Wes for the influence for this film sparking first from this string of stories he was hearing out of Cambodia.
Should we just get into this movie? Should we just jump into it?
Sorry,
you know
this really the intro. I got so excited.
We're excited about this. I love it.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's take a step back.
Let's open up the can. Open it up, because I would love you to start talking about that, because that's actually something I was gonna bring up in the can anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So now that we're in the can, we're appropriately set into where we should be. So the story blossomed from Wes seeing a string of stories in the LA Times.
Nightmare was written after I'd done 2 films back to back. I had made enough money on them to take 6 months off. So I basically took 6 months off and wrote and refined the script, Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street as a story seems to have its roots in these articles in the Los Angeles Times. That was a young man whose father was a doctor. They had come out of relocation camps. He was having nightmares, and he was telling his family that there's something after me, and I'm afraid if I don't stay awake, it'll kill me. This kid decided he was going to stay awake. Sleeping pills the father had been demanding that he take were found under his pillow. He hadn't taken any of them. And he had a coffee pot in his closet full of black coffee with a long extension cord that he had hidden behind curtains. They were all sitting in the living room watching a movie, and he just kind of fell asleep. Carried him upstairs, put him to bed, pulled the covers over him, and everyone goes, thank God. Everybody goes to bed in the middle of the night. They hear screaming. They run into his room, and before they get to him, he is dead. Oh man, I got to do a movie about that.
So that really planted that idea. Now it's just like, how do you extrapolate out from that and create this like shadowy, mythical force, this creature that is Freddy Krueger. Now, namesake-wise, Fred Krueger was a bully of Wes's when he was a kid, so that was a fucking easy way to get back at that guy.
Where are you, Krueger?
Krueger sounded very German and reminded me of one of the big war plants in Nazi Germany, and also it was an extension of Krug, who was the lead character in Last House on the Left.
So there was like all this just like negative tie-in there that worked nicely. Then we get to the fact that it's like, yes, Halloween and Friday the 13th have already come out. We get these great masked killers.
And they both were very powerful and successful films, and they had somebody in a mask. And at a certain point I thought, kill him in fire, and then he can have a mask of just scar tissue, and yet he'll be able to be articulate.
All these little elements. Also the hat. Wes saw a drunk man who terrified him when he was a kid.
I think that was a great part that I learned, was that all those little elements that made up Freddy were written in the script.
His sweater colors were out of an article I read in Scientific American, that these 2 colors were the most difficult for the human cornea or human eye to put side by side. The claws were the sort of pièce de résistance, and it was like, well, what does he have? Does he have a knife? Does he have a sickle? I think at that time we had a cat, and I just saw the cat doing this. I was like, oh, yeah, right.
The thought that went into the character before, and then you give it to an actor who then puts his stuff on top of it, which is great, and all this stuff working together to create this really, really scary force that you're hanging your hat on for the film in some way.
First of all, I never thought of making movies until I was almost 30. I was raised in a fundamentalist Baptist church. Almost all social things of any import were really within the church. And one of the beliefs they had, besides you can't play cards and dance and smoke and drink alcohol, was that you don't go to movies. Films didn't really happen until I started teaching college. We had an art theater that showed all the European films, fantastic Bergman and Fellini films, this amazing sort of fluorescence of astonishing films. That was my notion, is I want to do something like that. Quit my job. I just went to New York to figure out how to make films.
So he'd done Last House on the Left and then Hills Have Eyes, both with Sean Cunningham producing.
Around 1970 is when I first started to make films. I really didn't know how, and I was learning how to make all of these mistakes and how to make movies. In the middle of all of that, I meet this guy named Wes Craven. He was a rock. I mean, he was a terrific assistant, and he became a really good editor. After we had worked together for almost a year, it was like, I've got an idea, let's make a movie.
You brought up Sean Cunningham. I did just want to bring up the fact that that is the director of the first Friday the 13th, too.
Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
So
Sean Cunningham
I
came
think
from...
it mentioned that Wes was a grip or something on that as well. And so Sean Cunningham was definitely this guy who he kept going back to for advice and pointers, I think, throughout his career. So I just wanted to point out that there's a cool connection there between the franchises behind the scenes, which is cool.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, to tie in what brought this movie to the big screen officially, we have Bob Shea, who, when he broke into wanting to get into the film industry, he was just slinging out B and C movies out of his trunk of his car at college campuses.
Yeah. When you talk about like a movie distributor, like this guy is actually physically
boots on the ground.
At that time, Bob Shea and New Line Cinema were a tiny little, almost a storefront in lower Manhattan. That wasn't who I wanted to, make the movie for 10 cents.
He raised the money basically, I'm sure, from his own money, and I'm sure from friends and family. And then he was looking for the major investor. Smart Egg was going to advance him $1 million for the picture. A week later, he called me and said they dropped out.
Just about 2 weeks before we started shooting, he basically said, you guys should all just go home and I'll call you if I find money.
We had one final meeting with Media Home Entertainment, a guy named Joe Wolf who owned that company, and they were big home video distributors. Finally made a deal where Joe Wolf could take over the whole movie if I didn't get my commitment together in 3 or 4 weeks. I managed to then go to the Smart Egg guy and browbeat him into agreeing to put up the last few $100,000.
Not having any money to fund this, just pulling together contacts and a whole lot of trust. And I mean, this movie gave him so much stress and anxiety, he'd be picking at his fingernails and just left like bloodied under his fingers just because it's just constant. You don't even notice at that point. It's just like everything's spinning in your head, overwrites everything else.
Remember at that time, Bob has a thing about fingernails and kind of digging at them, and I looked over and they were all just bloody, and I realized the incredible amount of stress that comes from raising money and trying to get back into a picture.
Yeah, and to them, it's kind of like with Jaws, I'm sure Bob Shea looks back on the experience of A Nightmare on Elm Street and can only see a lot of very negative things about it, but what it created was so many people's careers, his career, Wes Craven's career, New Line Cinemas as a company. When I think of New Line Cinemas, I think, of course, of the classic New Line Cinemas production logo going into the fucking Lord of the Rings. So It's like from here to there, wow. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for A Nightmare on Elm Street, and for all of them getting behind the project and pushing it forward, because it worked. It worked, and people were terrified of it after that.
Yeah.
Going more into the actual filmmaking of this movie, something that I really wanted to highlight was actually the editing style.
One of the really effective things about this movie is that when you're shifting between the nightmares and dreams and actual reality, it's not that obvious.
I thought it was great what Wes was doing, because half the time I couldn't tell what was a dream and what was reality, even in the dailies. It fed in beautifully into what we tried to do editorially, which was kind of seamlessly go from reality into dreams.
We're at points in the movie where we're like, wait, are we in a dream right now, or are we awake? And I think that continues and gets more ramped up, especially towards the end, where we're questioning, fuck, are we actually in a dream right now? And that makes it scarier. That makes us more on edge of like, wait, have the characters fallen asleep? Is Freddy going to come out right now? The big first scene that we get with Tina, we think she's just walking outside because she hears a noise. But no, we are going into the first sequence where Freddy is there.
Yeah.
Please, God.
This is God.
And then we get just a bunch of really cool, fun, dreamlike moments where we're moving from space to space kind of seamlessly, all leading to this crazy, crazy death sequence that, again, not only showcases this really cool practical effect of the room spinning upside down, but also of like the brutality of this movie where it's like, I mean, it's a bloodbath. It's that classic like Janet Leigh moment in Psycho. We thought Tina was gonna be our main heroine, our final girl. She gets
12 minutes in.
12 minutes in, she's brutally slain. Like I said, what a way to kick off the movie.
The opening scene, we get Fred building out his gloves in the boiler room, because that was the thing they wrote, is just like he has hands with knives. We don't know what this is going to look like exactly, but he has to be able to have made it from what is available in a boiler room, essentially.
The famous glove, Freddy Krueger's glove. The original description in the script was fairly loose. Wes had a vision sort of in his mind of what it could do, but not how it was. I did a sketch, a side view sketch of what the whole thing would look like, just to work out the geometry, how's this thing going to move, where the rivets need to be, how's it attached to the glove. And then I handed the work off to Lou Carlucci and Charlie Bellardinelli, who were two of my guys, to actually build the glove itself. We wanted to use a commercially available knife. This little Echo steak knife was the most brutal looking thing. Reground, remounted on the glove to make those long talons.
And Jim was heavily, I mean, so much of like, obviously the whole crew as themselves, but Jim's like the adamant push that he had going so hard into so much of this was so cool to see.
Nightmare was a low budget movie for what they were attempting to do, especially. I think we had 80 effect shots in a 90-minute film. Wes, being an experienced low-budget director at that point, was able to use the budget to his advantage. We worked our way through ideas for some of these nightmares that would give him the bang on the screen.
Every scene has some really innovative effect in it. Wes was always the instigator. Any idea would be great. Okay, how are we going to make that today?
The long arms where they, again, practical, we just have like some form of like air inflation going through them, and there was two dudes with fishing rods on either end. Just the line out, just holding them into suspension.
It was critical that Tina's death had to be something that was completely otherworldly and completely confusing to the audience. The idea actually came from the Fred Astaire film Royal Wedding, which had a great sequence of him dancing around the rotating room. You can do that? I said, well, I think we can. So I went ahead and looked at the logistics. So, yeah, I think we can do this. We spent a month to get this thing done. Built the framework and then built the room inside of that.
Because this room's obviously going to shift, be spinning around, everything is set in it. They had to like glue, nail, they said they used starch, all these different elements and everything to make sure that nothing was going to fall, or the sheets of the bed even lifting up when it's just like everything had to be statically in place so that it could rotate without, the orientation of that.
We strapped Amanda's boyfriend down to the floor. We had his hair totally lacquered. And then there were two kind of jump seats that were bolted to the wall, and the camera was bolted to the wall.
The cameraman had himself strapped into a chair, and he kept the camera on, and he went around with the room.
We turned the room by hand, me and 3 or 4 guys. It was very spooky when it was turning all by itself.
Wes also would have to like come up out of a little trap door and tell Amanda, like, hey, this is your orientation. Like, you need to be looking this way because the room's very disorienting.
The only thing was, as soon as anybody walked into the room, they got totally nauseous because it was so disorienting.
I look up and there's the bed above me. Completely freak out. I get complete and utter vertigo and I start to feel that I'm falling. Wes's head comes through this hole in the floor and he's like, look, I am standing on the floor. This is my head. You're on the floor. You're looking right at me.
Amanda, this is down, this is up, this is down, this is up, just before the take.
I mean, we get the same room again for Glenn's death. They utilize the same spinning room, attached a bunch of these like tanks full of just water dye.
And then we took the same room and used it as Johnny Depp's room for the bed sequence. Part pulling him down through the bed was easy, but then when the mother comes in and sees all the blood come out, we inverted the room.
It's actually inspired by Kubrick a little bit, because The Shining had come out, and there was that scene with the blood spilling out of the elevators.
And I thought if he could get away with it, I could.
Roughly 220 gallons of the blood, as we called it. This was actually made with water, with food coloring and a little bit of poster paint to make it thick. It was stored on a scaffolding above the stage. Nobody could see anything because the room was all closed. All we could hear was this thunderous pounding on the floor, which was now the ceiling, of all this blood dumping into the room. It was probably about 30 of the most exciting seconds I've had on a film set.
What they didn't take into account for is once all that blood started rushing and flowing, it's filling into the corners of the room, and it starts to turn the room on itself. And so apparently there was a lot of fucking pandemonium after that took place. Some people on set got electrocuted as well because it like hit some live wire, some live current that was going. I think it was the guys who were up above with like where the rigging was coming from. But yeah, I mean, to come out of that mostly unscathed, no major injuries and stuff like that, they fucking, you know, I don't know if OSHA was around, but they fucking did it right.
Yeah, they definitely did it. I mean, I don't think OSHA was around, for sure. I would almost guarantee that. All right, you know what? Let's keep it rolling. We're going to keep going into a lot of these really cool effects as we continue the review. Let's get into the meat. In this case, the kid meat that Freddy's looking for to fillet for sure. And honestly, that's kind of what this movie is about. Sins of the father coming back to haunt the kids.
And the mother.
And the mother. The fathers and the mothers.
Fred Krueger, Mom. Fred Krueger. Do you know who that is, Mother? Because if you do, you better tell me, because he's after me now.
Yeah, it's kind of this like almost like generational trauma that we have trickling down from the parents' actions into the kids. Because what we learn is that, of course, Freddy, child murderer, he got off on some sort of technicality or something in the court, but the parents, they didn't like that.
You want to know who Fred Krueger was? He was a filthy child murderer who killed at least 20 kids in the neighborhood. Kids we all knew. A bunch of us parents tracked him down after they let him out. We found him in an old abandoned boiler room where he used to take his kids, then lit the whole thing up and watched it burn.
This movie is definitely not a good showcasing for parents.
No, Marge is drinking.
All these parents, like even Tina's parents, she comes in the first scene, is like, well, you got to figure this shit out.
Tina, honey, you got to cut your fingernails. You got to stop that kind of dreaming. One or the other.
It feels like their actions are coming back to haunt them in the ways of addiction, neglect for their children, and coming back for the kids in the way of Freddy Krueger. To no fault of their own, these kids are being killed off because their parents made a decision.
And I mean, like, that's like the double-ended aspect of that. It's like, what, you don't want the parents to make that decision, take that justice in their own hands after. Yeah. As much as, yes, we only hear that he was a child murderer. Wes has said, I did hear in post, that he was a rapist as well.
The worst crime imaginable to me is to harm a child. The fact that he was a child murderer and a child molester was just about the most loathsome creature I could imagine on the level of what he did.
Already just killing kids with knives. And, like, we get the girls skipping rope as our little kind of call sign for him of sorts. We assume maybe to an extent they were victims as well, or that's just kind of a...
It feels like kind of dreamy-esque like that.
Yeah.
You know? They're like kind of like sirens, almost like a warning sign. Also, that song just kind of goes to the fact of like this mythical creature, Freddy Krueger, but kind of this more picture of this like continuous trauma. It's not going to go away. You know, it's in lore. It's in these songs that we are now passing down, teaching our kids. And as long as fear is around and dreams, he's going to always be there. So how do you defeat something like that?
Yeah, very like Babadook took a similar premise of dealing with trauma in your life and something that you're never going to be able to get rid of, but it's just like, how do you get to the point of coping and managing? And which we ultimately get, that's like the way of getting away from Freddy at the end, is not giving him the power.
I know the secret now. This is just a dream. You're not alive. This whole thing is just a dream. I take back every bit of energy I gave you.
You're nothing.
One funny tidbit I want to go to is that they originally scripted this film to be in California. They wanted it to reach a little broader audience, so it takes place in Canton, Ohio, or
I think it's Springwood.
Oh yeah, okay.
Ohio,
yeah, something like that. Ohio.
I think it's fake,
but we do get them on the bridge with palm trees in this very. It's just you could have just chose any other location if you didn't want it to be so fucking on the nose that this is not Ohio.
It's like, I've seen that in California before.
And that was great because that was like we get Glenn, Johnny Depp's kind of talking about, was it Cantonese or something, dream practices or something, how they create all this art and stuff from what they pull from their dreams.
Did you ever read about the Balinese way of dreaming? Dream skills.
What if they meet a monster in their dreams? Then what?
They turn their back on it, take away its energy, and it disappears.
That was what was needed, the information that was needed to know to kind of bring back around, to kind of bring the power back into your hands. Funny with another Wes's daughter was kind of tired of seeing the representation of women being clumsy, and like when he did Swamp Thing, there was like fumbling around, tripping over themselves, and just being very very much a undefendable a victim who can't defend themselves in any way. So there was like trying to turn the tides with that, and then she had good influence on that. And then the other one was the casting of Johnny Depp himself, where she said, "I will run away from home if you don't cast this guy."
It came down to 3 guys. Johnny Depp was one, and there was just a name. She said, "Well, I'm thinking of this guy," which is not Johnny. And my daughter and her friend said, "Dad, Johnny Depp." Oh, he's sexy. He's so sexy. He's a dreamboat.
That boy's career too, talking about not just the house that Freddy built within New Line Cinema, but whether or not he would have still had the same trajectory of his career, more than likely. Johnny Depp was Johnny Depp, but still.
First movie. Yep. Gotta say, it's his first movie. It is. I'm glad that you brought up Nancy, though, because I did want to talk about her in The Cook, if you want to move on to The Cook. Because I think that, in the wake of learning that her parents are responsible for everything that's happening to them, essentially, she, I think as far as final girls go, Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp, is definitely one of my favorites, because she, when all this weird stuff starts happening, she immediately believes her friends.
Rod didn't kill Tina. And he didn't hang himself. It's this guy. He's after us in our dreams.
She then goes to figure out what is going on and does find out, and then figures out how to, in some ways, conquer her dreams or figure out the necessary information that she needs to defeat the ultimate evil.
That's when I started poking around lucid dreaming and that concept that you can go into a dream and be awake. And I just invented this little conceit that if you were holding something when you woke up, it would come with you back into your reality.
I grab the guy in my dream. You see me struggling, so you wake me up. We both come out, you whack the fucker, and we got him.
She's strong, she's brave, she's smart and resourceful. She's doing Home Alone, fucking rigs all over her house. And I just really love, like you said, it sounds like if Wes took that advice from his daughter, he took it great, because
fully, yeah.
She's no victim.
No, and there's
victim.
no one there helps her. Glenn doesn't help her for shit. He fails 2 or 3 times in a row.
I'm gonna go and look for somebody. And I want you to stand like a sort of a guard, okay? Okay?
Okay.
Just stay awake and watch me. Just wake me up if it looked like I was having a bad dream. And what did you do, you shit?
No one is there to help her. Her parents, for sure, are not. Her mom fucking not there to help her.
Taking her to get sleep studies, forcing her into that.
Bars on the windows.
It's like, yeah, how do you wrap your head around your daughter being attacked by this guy in her dreams? But how would she manifest this in the first place? She never knew about him, never seen him or anything. She's giving you the physical hat. That dirty old thing, I threw it away. Why the fuck would you do that?
Are you serious?
Are you just against me, Mom? Marge,
Mom, the fuck. Or as she calls her, Mother.
Mother!
And I think about the other final girls that we have at this time. I mean, Alice from Friday the 13th, she's just running around and gets a lucky shot into Jason's mom. And I love Laurie, but in the first Halloween, she really is just kind of running and hiding. This is the first time it feels like someone is like turning and actually like fighting back.
Nancy was played by this young woman who walked into the casting office, Heather Langenkamp. There was just nothing pretentious about her, but she was smart. She had an open face. She had a strong face.
I remember the interview really well because it was the scene where I'm describing how my dream had this guy in it with fingernails, and I remember, making that sound.
Nancy.
I remember looking at Wes, and I could tell he really liked it. The character that I love the most and have identified with the most is Nancy Thompson. She had a great sense that she could solve problems without anybody's help at all. I try to be like her, actually.
Yeah, and I do want to throw props to Heather Langenkamp just from like an acting standpoint, because I do think she does a great job. She's got a lot to deal with. She has to first, deal with the death of her best friend, which I think you can definitely feel the sorrow.
Someone was trying to kill her. That's why we were there, Mom. She just didn't want to sleep alone.
Turning that into like an anger that she has towards Freddy for what he did to her friends.
I'm ready to show you yourself, you bastard!
I wanted to give a nod to Tony Caesar, who is the stuntman who came in from, he was known for pyro, known for fire, from doing the Swamp Thing, The Thing, Ghostbusters, Terminator. He was the guy to light on fire.
He did what he said was the longest fire burn down to that time when Freddy was caught on fire in the basement, runs up the stairs.
I couldn't believe this guy was actually doing this. It's nuts. We're sitting there with the fire extinguishers. When is he going to stop? He rolls back down the stairs on fire. Nobody'd ever done that before. Gets up, starts back up the stairs. And we're like, okay. Finally, he went down, hot enough, and we put him out.
They put him out and he stood up and said, how'd it go?
Those little moments, those little additions, a few extra seconds, a few more frames that we get out of it. If you think back to that scene, if you see him just lit from behind the stairwell or back behind where he was, comes around 5 feet or so, goes down, that's pretty quick, sweet. You get so much more out of it. And, just a nod to Tony.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Tony Caesar?
Tony Caesar.
Tony Caesar. Thank you, Tony. Another person on the crew who's clearly passionate about what they do, and you put that person in a position to do what they love, and obviously he delivered. That's great. But speaking of Fred, let's get to the thrill, shall we?
Yes.
And our man, Fred Krueger. And really Robert Englund, because he's the one that brought him to life.
My buddy smoked, and he'd ridden over with me, and I'd used some ash from the ashtray in my car, which is an old makeup theater trick, and put a little bit of circles under my eyes. It looks very, very real. You can fool people with it. I just sat there and stared back at Wes.
Wes came out of the meeting, and Robert had left, and he told me, he said, this man can do this.
He was just full of piss and vinegar, and he just loved the role. He said, I just can't wait to sink my teeth into this.
What I took was Klaus Kinski. I was really impressed with his Nosferatu. And I took the thrusted neck that Klaus did on that. And then the other one was, there was a certain kind of, a you dirty rat kind of swagger that Jimmy Cagney had that I wanted to bring to Freddy. Sometimes even walking crossover like a surfer walks on a surfboard or like a runway model. It gives Freddy a kind of a glide. Gonna get you. I really began to play with it. And that would be what happened to me. I remember playing around in craft service and goofing in craft service with it, putting different, jujubes and marshmallows and putting jelly on it, making it look like guts and stuff like that. That's when I really got comfortable with it and really began to really get it into the frame.
Really a collaboration between him and Wes Craven, obviously, and these other people that built these things. Jim Doyle, the makeup designer, David B. Miller. All these people came together to create this character that is so iconic.
I did 5 different sculptures of what I thought Freddy should look like based on burn makeups. I did a lot of research. Wes kind of mixed and matched different things on each sculpture, and then we came up with a final look. When he first got into it, it was almost like he was afraid to move around, like it was gonna fall off or something. And he goes, "This is amazing. It all holds together and it moves." And he started moving his mouth around and moving his eyebrows, and he was just all excited after that.
Yeah, and David B. Miller's makeup was tremendous. I mean, I think it was like 3 layers, different layers that he had on that all kind of had that movability together. So it wasn't like stiff, hardened. It gave Freddy a lot of range to articulate a lot of those sharp features and stuff that he makes, the high, Anytime he's like raising those eyebrows and stuff, letting those eyes shine through. And that run like became like an iconic thing, that kind of like side to side stride coming forward at you, kind of like.
It's almost like a grapevine that he's doing sometimes. Again, we're talking about the micro budget of this film too, where there was definitely no like CGI. Everything that we see is practical effects. And I think it's a great testament to practical effects in general and what you can do on such a tight budget and still have these effects that look so great.
My feeling about special effects were twofold. One, I wasn't terribly expert in it. And 2, I couldn't afford them anyway. So everything was pretty much practical, which is a film term for just done physically.
Another cool little effect that I wanted to highlight is, of course, the classic Freddy coming through the wall.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up too.
Over Nancy. What they said that was?
It was spandex.
So new at the time.
It was a new material. Jim Doyle was like, "Let me go get some of this really quick." They made a wall panel of it, put it behind.
That would be me. That would be my face, is Freddy in that particular shot.
Nancy stirs.
I think that's my hero shot.
Freddy's got to come back. We didn't know what it would look like. I just said, just press your face against it and press your hand out, and we'll see how it looks. And we looked at it like, whoa, that's really terrific. But, it cost 10 cents.
But again, just like a very quote-unquote simple thing that they did that looks just so great and has become so iconic.
Yeah, and then Jim, too, fucking dirty bastard, got in the bathtub where they had a tank cut out underneath where her feet were. And so Nancy's feet were basically like up on his shoulders.
Well, you're going to be on this little box in the bathtub, and then we're going to have Jim Doyle from underneath who's going to, stick the claw up through the bathwater bubbles. I'm like, okay, you guys have obviously thought about this more than I have.
It wasn't a difficult thing to do. We just cut a hole under the bathtub, cut a hole in the bathtub, sealed a tank below. As I just held my breath and just would, duck under the water when Wes said action, and I could hear him because he was right next to the wall, so I could hear him through the wall. And I just took cues from him.
Right, too high.
And had to be really, really, really careful because that was the sharp glove.
Hand out.
And for some reason, they talked about people cut their hands a lot early on with the knives. Number one, not thinking about like coiling fingers and stuff. But they had plastic knife, like a prop, a hand glove that was plastic. They had the sharp reel blades. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it was how it looked, they used the sharp reel blades when they did that, and he was like, it was a lot of like knowing where the hand was going. Jim Doyle's under the water, he can't see.
They had several different ones. They had sharp ones and plastic ones and non-sharp ones. And whenever Freddy would grab me, I'd say, this is the not sharp one, right? And often they would forgotten to switch him out. He's like, oh no, this is the sharp one.
How do you not nick her leg?
And there's some major arteries right there.
Oh yeah.
Now, after learning that, every time I see that shot, I'm going to think about that of like...
Yeah, because we were talking before, like somebody just reaching in from the side, but it's like you see that arm, it comes up so just straight-ended that it's like it had to be emanating from like directly beneath. And again, building something out, but like a very simple basis for practicality, and that obviously became such an iconic shot that has been spun over in numerous ways kind of since.
I mean, I think about it too, like drains, just drains being pulled through a drain, something coming out of a drain. It's just like, it is very dreamlike to play with that. And I feel like, again, they are preying on something that people actually fear, multiple people think about that. So, yeah,
dude, fucking drains, scary. We had some family friends growing up who told me about it before when I was way too young to ever see it or anything. And I didn't even have to see it to be fucking scared of drains. And they talked about coming up out of a shower drain, getting this boy, and I was like, all right, well, thanks for that.
I think we talked about that scene in Terrifier episode too. That scene's come up multiple times.
Right, yeah. Right,
it's always around. It is always around.
Well, clearly you can tell the mark that it had on my childhood.
See you in your dreams.
I can't remember if it was this Kurt Russell film that he did early on about like the world's strongest boy or something, or he gets like injected with this, or like accidentally takes some drug or something, and he becomes this super strong. He's picking telephone poles up like accidentally, like leans to like tie his shoe or something. He's bending it over. It might be mixed with another movie, but there's like a scene in this like conference boardroom where somebody's swinging on the light fixtures, but they were like trapeze bars basically, and like. It's just going to like what you could build out in a set and just have fun with and play with, and how fucking fun that must be too, to like have that idea come to mind, build it out to fruition, and see those successes.
Yeah, and they definitely worked. They worked in this movie for sure. Let's get into the ride. Let's pull it
ride.
in.
Ride through.
Ride right through. I mean, just in the ride, I gotta say right out, this is one of my favorite horror movies. I did put this in the lineup for a reason. We had never picked it before when Leslie and I were doing the podcast, and I've been waiting around for it for a very long time.
Got a little impatient.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick it. And I'm glad we did. And, for some reason, it worked out well within the lineup so far. Just because of what we talked about at the beginning of this is another film that has become obviously so iconic within the genre, but unbeknownst to them at the time. They were just trying to make a movie that they believed in against all odds.
I really started getting excited when we took the film to MIFED in Milan, which is a foreign film sales convention. All of the skeptical investors and home video people and all the yada, all of a sudden they would get very quiet when they walked out. Everybody had a sense that this was a film that was really going to work.
Wes, Robert, the people that really believed in the project and created these characters, it came together in the perfect way to create a franchise.
Well, yeah, and all the trust on the back end, again, for Bob Shea, promising this money for even, who composed the music again? He didn't.
Charles Bernstein?
Yeah, Bernstein. He didn't even have the budget for him right away, just had to trust that it would get there. Doyle is the same thing, talking about we had like a $57,000 effects budget, didn't have that, and he's like, we got it. We got the end of, the whole process and everything. We ended up getting what we were told we would get from it.
My day-to-day concerns were keeping people working. We had growing discontent with the crew because we were falling behind.
I asked Bob, what do I do? I've never produced before. I've never represented a studio on a production. Bob said, just keep pacing back and forth, looking at your watch, and sign.
Right at the end, after, they wrapped on everything, were trying to get a bigger name behind it, they had a screening for Paramount. And I guess Bob had talked to somebody at Paramount who had seen it before, or somebody else, and they really, and this goes back to like how the ending was, and I think it was wanting to have Marge suck through the door where they didn't have it in this cut. Rick was splicing it in real time and gets the call that they basically wanted this change editing. He had to call his assistant to then drive and pick up the film that he needed to cut it in. So then she gets there. They then have to come up with some reason to stop the film within the last 5 minutes for a couple minutes, which just kills all the momentum that you build into the final sequence. They finally get it in there, but by that time it just lost its luster and Paramount ended up passing on it. And so it went from there to a New York publicist, PR gal, who they reached out to and basically got her a little bit of magic. I'm sorry, I'm spacing on her name right now too. It was her little bit of magic that was able to get it into a few theaters where it was even just that word of mouth had lines out the door for the premiere. And then immediately thereafter, it's just it filled into studios across the United States and then globally. And it just it took off.
Through video, it had such a huge following. That's when people would come up to me and I was like, oh my gosh.
It became a cultural phenomenon.
I did a show once with Robert, and as soon as Robert walked out, the kids stood up and started chanting, "Freddy, Freddy."
I have never liked him in the way that his fans liked him. I always felt like he was like the sickest, most depraved, disgusting, evil, devil character. That's what's wrong with our world.
Interestingly enough, the deal they initially had for Robert Englund was that he would come on for multiple pictures because they didn't know that if like this potentially does take off, we want to have you secured, which was great forethought to have at that time because it was absolutely necessary. And to have Robert Englund don Freddy for this amount of time, I mean, that's one of the biggest, my favorite horror franchise being Halloween. The biggest blunders that franchise has is the shape. Yes, it's a masked figure, but you lose Nick Castle, and like it changed a lot over the physicality of how you saw Michael and everything has a lot of little variants to it that just Brad Lorre, I believe, is who played him in H2O, and it's weird. It's hard to put your finger on it exactly, but it gives enough of a shift around it that it pulls a little bit of like the succinctness across all chapters. Now, Robert Englund going all the way to Freddy versus Jason, it's just like, yes, it's a burned figure and everything, but that face, everything is just so tied in there, and it's really hard to open that back up.
Come to Freddy.
What I think I recently read, and I need to help me if I was wrong who this was, some producer who was trying to revamp Nightmare on Elm Street now wanted Jim Carrey.
I did hear that too.
As Freddy Krueger, and I certainly could see that. And I mean, you wouldn't really expect necessarily that they're trying to open up a whole bunch of like a new trilogy or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Getting him to commit to that, and knowing that Jim Carrey has had qualms with extensive makeup previously, with Rick Baker's tremendous work in The Grinch.
The Mask.
And,
I don't know who that was.
And then, yes, of course, The Mask. But anyway,
yeah. Well,
it was
and
just
actually,
fun.
I was watching a interview with Damien Leone, our director and writer from last week, and he expressed that if there was ever any talks about remaking a Friday the 13th, but especially a Nightmare on Elm Street, he would really want to lead that project because that's apparently one of his favorites.
Well, and who better to?
Who
almost.
better? That would be a crazy Freddy.
Again, like we're talking about horror icons, and again, I mean, I felt like I couldn't even touch on it enough. Like I don't know how broader people aren't talking about how crazy it is in a 9-year span of a film that still wasn't like a major market release in horror, but has that horror fandom that Art the Clown is so embedded into everything. I mean, I just showed you a little haunted house that house decorations I had seen this previous Halloween. And in the yard, they had every iconic horror figure animatronic there, but right front and center within them was Art the Clown. Every Halloween store, I mean, so much of Spirit Halloween is built around Art the Clown. They do children's costumes and stuff for him. So even like audiences that aren't even seeing this character and understanding what he brings to the table are aware of him. But
oh god,
you get into just like, again, stripped down to, not saying he would have a small budget for it. He would more than likely, it would be a decent backing behind it. But what he was able to do with Terrifier, Art the Clown, the special effects, the specificity of those kills, the creativeness and stuff, it's like you would want somebody who is an expert at that to helm things forward and bring that practical touch to a dream sequence. A movie that is dealing in surrealism extensively,
because he obviously likes that.
And yeah, and you get surrealism in Terrifier in and of itself already. I mean, there is like the segue from one to the other is almost like he did it to be like, hey, I can helm the new Nightmare moving forward.
That'd be sick. And it's. I'm just finding more and more parallels of just like, thinking about Damien Leone with Terrifier, and then now we're talking about Wes Craven with A Nightmare on Elm Street. These are these guys' projects that like launched them into their careers. Unfortunately, Wes Craven isn't around anymore. but we now can see the magnitude of his career after this movie. You know, he went on to make so many good movies, and I would say that this movie in some ways reinvented the genre of changing, you know, how a final girl could be. And then I feel like he did it again when he made Scream. We now have the horror genre reflecting on itself. We have a way more tongue-in-cheek film about a genre that he in some ways helped to create. So it's just really cool to look back at the scope of his career and then it starting here.
Yeah, and that flipping the camera, like the lens back into itself, basically with Scream, and having that then become possibly an even bigger franchise, at least just from a, you know, the audience pull that you're going to get with that. Scream just had that in the zeitgeist of slasher films. What the 90s was for that, which was, you know, the 90s was kind of almost like as I think Tarantino called it, the second wave of the 70s. And he didn't realize it in it, but he's like, in retrospect, looking back at it, it was like the 70s part two. And yeah, I mean, especially from a young age, that was the other one that really was tied in, sewn in for me. And I mean, we only had 3 growing up, but rinse and repeat, watched them every summer and stuff with Scream.
And they're great. They're all great.
Yeah. And I mean, we got Scream 7 now coming. So I mean, it's crazy. It's climbing its way up the totem.
Yep. And that started from Wes. Crazy. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Fuck. 1984. Wow. Let's get to these Smash Pumpkins, shall we? I'm very curious to see where you land on the street. This ain't Sesame Street.
I give Nightmare on Elm Street a solid 3.5.
3.5. Nice.
3.5 on the Smash.
I like it. I think that's fair. It's very fair. What about Creepiest Kitty?
Creepiest Kitty for me, you know, it's a tough one to pull in and around on. I think just because of I love when Tina pulls his face off. And it's not like it was like what resonates is necessarily like the scariest moment for me, but like it is still like a very jarring, thrilling to get like the amount of like the Freddy's face, but then just like a skull behind it type thing, and just how it was just like they just layered that sucker up with KY jelly so it would just slip off with ease.
Freddy's face getting pulled off, that was a puppet. I had to build a whole puppet of Robert, head and torso. I had to put his face on, but I couldn't glue it down because it had to smear off like really easy. So I just used KY jelly and just loaded it in there on the skull face.
I think it was one take. Just much of that stuff was just very, very, very simply done.
I think that it's really hard for me to not give this movie a 5. But I'm trying to hold myself back here because I understand that I'm in the review podcast right now. But I really do think that a lot of things about this movie work really well. And so I'm going to give it a 4.8.
All right.
Close. Very close up there to the perfect one. This is like my Jaws, you know, it's kind of like the movie that I grew up watching, continuing to go back to without realizing it, probably making me and informing a lot of the things that I love to create myself. You know, I love playing with dreams, and in that realm, it's just a fun place to be. And so I probably have to give some credit to that to Freddy Krueger. So, yeah, just another influential one for me. But, you know, I'll pump the brakes a little bit.
Tiny bit.
4.8.
I like it. No, I'm with it, and I get that. It's the same reason I gave Jaws the full 5, the full 5 stamp. I stamped it.
It's fair too. I almost really did give this the 5.
I understand. And again, when it's a lot easier to give a little more love to movies when you understand more of the behind the scenes, which I think is fucking important for a lot of just like general viewers, I think actually general viewers of movies are a little bit more gracious when it comes to not being so heavy-handed. But sometimes we can be, myself included, in moments and stuff, just like really rag on movies and stuff. And it's like, well, there is a lot of variables that we don't entirely know that come to why something had to be. From budget to time's sake to, so many things. And then on that same other end of that, as to like what makes that magic happen and everything. And so, again, like getting to strip things down, know that they were just basically sitting on promised money. Nothing was for certain. What the ingenuity, what they had to be innovative and create, and trust, like all the way through into the end, that this wasn't just going to bleed them out and just like fuck everything over. And that's a lot of trust that you got to put into things. I mean, Bob Shea was fucking picking his fingers apart for a reason.
But we found very talented people who were willing to work for the money we had, and were able to take a few $1,000s and turn it into a bed spurting blood or something like that.
We laughed a lot on the set.
In a horror movie, there's so many ludicrous things going on with the stage blood and the makeup and the melodramatic style of acting sometimes that you really have to embrace because everything around you is larger than life. But you kind of got to giggle, and Wes certainly knows that and encourages a little bit of that so then you can get down to business.
It's awesome. This shit is awesome. Dude.
It's awesome. And honestly, we hope that we can bring that to you, the listener, the watcher, that is partly the reason why we are diving so headfirst into the behind the scenes, because I think it is really important for us to appreciate all the work that goes into every single one of these movies, whether we like it or not. It was a labor of love for somebody. So we hope that we can educate you more on how these films are made and give you just a little bit more of appreciation for what went down behind the scenes. Just real quick, my creepiest kitty has always been my creepiest kitty. The thing that always has stuck with me is that long ass arm Freddy. It's just like, you don't even see his face in that moment. It's just that silhouette. And just like the weirdness of
the wiggling.
It's just so odd, and it's very unnerving. And it just always sticks with me.
That was my secondary one, and it's just it's exactly that. It's the how it relates to how you remember it as a kid. And I mean, for like Halloween wise, not to jump and ship again to something else, but you just talk about those, like how those little scenes in bed. The first Halloween I ever saw when I was a kid was Halloween 5, and it was the end of Halloween 5 when Jamie's being chased around in Michael's house. She goes down the laundry hamper. He goes downstairs to get her there. He's ripping out a can, open it up. Finally rips it open. He pops his head, looking up the laundry chute, and it's that top-down shot into his face looking up. That always just like, and it's the quickness of the movement, everything that's just like around it. And yeah, the way those types of images burn in, and those long, gangly arms, now that we know are inflated with some air, and two guys had some fishing lines on either end just to secure them up.
I love it even more.
Yeah,
honestly, I really do.
Absolutely.
It's great. Nightmare on Elm Street. Thank you so
Nightmare
much
on Elm Street
for stopping by, and thank you so much for stopping by. Please don't forget, like, subscribe, turn on those notifications.
Comment away. Send us sweet nothings. Hopefully not nothings, though.
Sweet somethings, maybe.
Sweet somethings.
And yeah, please at the Deadlights Pod, and definitely check out Playground Social Studios, where we are filming this right now.
In the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois.
Yes. Thank you to Rudy Sheeter, who's in the booth.
Thank you, Andrew Degner, for your continued work on the sidelines, making us look good.
And of course, Michael Sinus, for your beautiful TVs that we continue to look at the Deadlights through. And if you want to check me out, you can find me at BPPritchyT.
You can find me at MR_Andreessen.
But until next time,
stay spooky, y'all.
Stay spooky, y'all. Woo. 1, 2. Freddy is coming for you.